In the heart of the ancient village of Adeola, nestled between towering hills and dense forests, there lived a man named Adeola. To the villagers, he was no ordinary man. He was the chosen one, a figure that was respected and feared. The gods, they believed Adeola had been gifted with the power to call upon the rain whenever the skies withheld their blessings and the earth began to crack under the weight of the sun's fury. Adeola was the one they turned to. He was the rain caller, the one who held the keys to the heavens. Hello everyone, I welcome you all back to my YouTube channel. If today is your first time of coming across my video, please support me by subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification button so you can always be the first person to get notified anytime I drop a new video. Thank you. Let's go back into the story. Adeola lived a life of humility. His home was a modest clay hut at the edge of the village, surrounded by the sacred grove where the gods were said to dwell. Each time the land grew dry, he would go into the grove, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of divine presence. There, he would kneel under the canopy of ancient trees, chanting prayers and incantations. His voice, deep and resonant, would rise and fall like a sacred melody, and without fail, the sky would darken, the winds would stir, and the rain would pour down in torrents. The villagers would cheer, their faces alight with gratitude, while Adeola would return to his small hut, quiet and unassuming, asking for nothing but their faith in return. The village of Adeola had prospered under Adeola's care. The rivers flowed with fresh water, the land yielded bountiful harvests, and the people had everything they needed to live happily. As time passed, Adeola's fame spread beyond the village. People from neighboring towns and villages came to seek his help. The gifts and the offering grew richer, and Adeola's pride began to grow with them. What had once been a humble task of calling the rain had slowly turned into something he felt he controlled. The gods, he believed, were only instruments for his will. He was no longer just a messenger of the rain. He was the maker of the rain. "I bring the rain," he would say with a smirk, "and no one but me can call the rain," he often bragged. One evening, as the village gathered to celebrate another successful harvest, Adeola stood before them, his head held high. "Without me," he declared, "the rains would never fall and the land would wither. It is I who command the skies." The villagers cheered, their trust in him unshaken, but the elders exchanged uneasy glances. They whispered among themselves, sensing a bit of shift in the man they had once respected. As Adeola's pride grew, so did his demands. No longer content with simple tokens of gratitude, he began to ask for rare treasures, expensive clothes, and even livestock. The gods required these offerings, he would say, but in truth, his heart yearned for the wealth and power that came with his position. Adeola's house, once a simple and modest hut, was now filled with treasures. The walls were adorned with rich tapestries, and his shelves were piled high with fine wines and delicacies. His family grew wealthier, and his children were spoiled with every luxury. But his heart, once humble, grew cold and distant. He began to believe that he was untouchable and that his power could never fail. Yet, with each day passing by, his connection to the gods weakened, though he was too blinded by arrogance to see it. The villagers began to notice a change in Adeola. Once humble and gracious, he now demanded more. He asked for greater gifts, expensive clothes, food, and even rare jewelries. In return, he performed the rituals that brought the rain, but there was a growing sense of arrogance in his actions. The villagers whispered amongst themselves, but they dared not to challenge him. After all, without Adeola, their land would remain dry, their crops would perish, and their children would starve. One fateful year, the rains did not come as they usually did. At first, the villagers were patient. They knew that drought could happen, but they trusted in Adeola's power. Soon, they reassured each other the rain would fall, Adeola would call it. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The land began to dry up, and the rivers shrank until they were nothing more than shallow streams. The villagers' faces grew pale with fear. The crops began to wither, and the animals grew weak from thirst. Still, they waited, hoping that Adeola could bring them salvation once again. When Adeola finally went to the grove behind his hut to perform the ritual, something felt wrong. The air was thick with tension, and the wind seemed still, as if even nature itself was holding its breath. He stood in the center of the grove, where the spirits of the gods were said to dwell, and began his chants. But this time, the clouds did not gather. The sky remained clear and empty. Adeola's heart skipped a beat. He repeated the chants and incantations louder, with more force, but still there was no response. For the first time in many years, Adeola felt fear creeping upon him. The gods must be distracted, he said, trying to calm his nerves. I will call upon them again. The rain will come. But despite his efforts, the sky remained unchanged. Days passed, and the villagers' hope began to fade. They had watched Adeola call the rain countless times before. And now, when they needed him the most, he had failed them. The people began to whisper among themselves. Why is the rain not coming? They asked. Why is Adeola unable to bring it? At first, Adeola refused to listen to their doubts. He believed that the rain would come soon enough, that his connection with the gods was unshakable. "Be patient," he told the villagers. "I will call the rain again and it will fall." But the longer he waited, the more the villagers' anxiety grew. They could see the land turning brown, the crops withering, and their livestock weakening. People began to murmur that maybe Adeola was no longer as powerful as they thought. The village elders called for a meeting. They spoke of their fears openly, their voices heavy with concern. "What if Adeola has lost his gift?" one elder said. "What if the gods have turned away from him?" But none of them dared to speak directly to Adeola. He was still the rain caller, and he still had the power to bring the rain. At least, they hoped. Adeola, now filled with doubt and frustration, went to the sacred grove again. This time, he performed the ritual with even greater intensity. He called upon the gods with every ounce of his being, his voice rising to the heavens, but still the sky remained empty. No clouds appeared, no wind stirred. The silence was deafening. He fell to his knees in the center of the grove, his hands raised to the sky. "Why have you abandoned me, my ancestors?" he cried out. "Why have you turned your back on your servant?" But no answer came. The land continued to dry up, and the people began to lose faith in him. The children cried for food. The elders prayed for rain, but the heavens were silent. As the days wore on, the villagers grew restless. They no longer saw Adeola as the man who held the rain, but as a man who had failed them. They began to gather in secret, speaking in harsh tones about what to do next. Some suggested that they turn to other spiritual leaders for help. Others wanted to leave the village in search of a place where the rain still came. But the fear of losing their way of life kept them rooted in Ileoro. Crushed by the weight of their words, Adeola returned to his grove for the last time. He stood there, facing the open sky, and called upon the gods once more. His voice trembled, but his pride pushed him forward. He called with every ounce of strength left in him, but this time the heavens did not respond. The sky, once filled with promises and rain, was now silent and quiet. In the days that followed, a strange stillness came over Ileoro. The wind no longer whispered through the trees, and the earth remained dry, as though the village had been forgotten by the world. The villagers tried everything they could think of to bring rain, but it never came. No matter how hard Adeola tried, he could no longer call upon the heavens. The villagers, in their grief, turned away from Adeola. They no longer saw him as the man who held the rain, But as the man who had brought them nothing but ruin, they abandoned him, leaving him alone in the village that had once celebrated him. Months passed and the land remained dry. The crops did not grow and the rivers did not fill. The villagers moved on, rebuilding their lives without Adeola's help. But for Adeola, there was no escaping the emptiness he felt. His pride had led to his downfall, and now he was nothing. The once great rainmaker wandered the village, but no one would speak to him. He had become a ghost, a man without purpose. He had once held the power to bring life to the land, but now he had nothing. One day, Adeola climbed the hill where he had once called the rain with such confidence. He stood there, looking at the dry land below. He had nothing left, no friends, no family members, no relatives, no respect, and no power. The rain would never come again. He had lost everything. And so, Ileoro remained dry. The crops did not grow, and the rivers stayed empty. The villagers had learned the harsh lesson that pride and arrogance could lead to disaster. As for Adeola, he became a memory, a man who had once been great, but now forgotten. The gods had taken the rain from him, and the land would never see it again. The once thriving village was now a barren place, and the people, though they rebuilt their lives, could never forget the man who had called the rain, but lost everything in the end. We finally come to the end of the story, guys. If you find this story interesting, please support me by subscribing to my channel and by turning on the notification bell so you can always get notified anytime I drop a new video just like this one. Thank you. See you in my next video.